Hi, I'm going to show you how I fixed this annoying issue on my Siemens iQ500 washer dryer. It cost me less than £20 in parts and I only needed a few basic tools. My machine is a Siemens WD14H421GB which I bought in 2016, but this fix should work for any similar Siemens, Neff or Bosch machine that has a flow rate sensor. That includes washing machines and washer dryers. The symptoms my machine had were a flashing tap icon on the display, along with a sequence of loud beeps which you heard at the beginning of the video. It seemed to happen randomly, but occurred on pretty much every wash cycle. The machine was also overfilling, and clothes were sometimes coming out too wet, even after a drying cycle. So what's the problem here? Well, the tap icon is trying to tell us that the machine isn't getting enough water from the supply. Now that may be true for your machine, so if yours isn't overfilling, you may need to clean out the inlet valve. There's a video showing you how to do that in the description below. If it seems like your machine is getting plenty of water, let's use the service mode to run a test. To put your machine into service mode, start with the dial in the off position, then turn it to drain, which is at 6 o'clock. Now you need to press and hold down the temperature button whilst turning the dial one notch clockwise to 7 o'clock and let go. On some other machines, you need to use the spin speed button rather than the temperature button, so you might need to experiment. At this point, you should see error E28 or E29 flash up, and it'll beep. This means the flow rate sensor is faulty. Whether you see the error or not, we're going to run a test on the flow rate sensor, which is P09. We conveniently happen to be in that position already, so you just need to close the door and press start. This test will attempt to fill the drum with the correct amount of water. If your flow rate sensor is faulty, it'll let too much water into the machine, beep at you, and throw up another error code. Once the test is complete, the drum will probably be full of water, so turn the machine off, then set it to drain. Now the machine didn't seem to let me run that test again until it had successfully completed a full cycle, so don't worry about trying to do that. Anyway, the test has confirmed that we have a faulty flow rate sensor which needs replacing. If you want to know more about service mode, check the description for a video I've linked to which shows all the different options in more detail on a similar model. The flow rate sensor is actually a simple reed switch component on a little PCB housed in this black plastic piece here. It lives on the inlet valve, also known as the water fill valve. Water enters the valve and spins a little wheel as it passes through, which has a couple of tiny magnets in it. As the magnets spin past the sensor, they cause the reed switch to complete a circuit, which tells the control unit that a certain volume of water has entered the machine. The fault occurs when the reed switch gets stuck and no longer reacts to the magnetic field, so the machine doesn't register the water coming in and it keeps filling. Frustratingly, you can't buy the part separately from the inlet valve, and the valve for my machine was around £100 from Siemens, and even more expensive to buy from eSpares, but I have a sneaky trick to get around that. All you need to do is buy this 2-port valve assembly from UK White Goods, which I've linked in the description below. Take the flow rate sensor off the new valve and pop it on your existing 3-port valve. Now if you're lucky enough to have one of the machines listed on the page for that part, you might as well just replace the whole valve. If not, you may be able to find a valve unit for your model on the manufacturer's website or other spare parts sites. But if they're a bit pricey, you can just swap the sensor over instead. If you decide to go for that option and have a different model to mine, I'd advise you take the current valve out first and check the black plastic bit looks identical to these images here, otherwise it may not fit or work correctly. To replace the sensor or the valve, you'll need to unplug or turn off the power to the machine, then take the top off by undoing the 2 torx screws on the back and sliding the lid backwards before lifting it off. The inlet valve is in the back corner here. Frustratingly, the flow rate sensor is really tricky to get to with the inlet valve in place, so I removed the valve completely before swapping the sensor. This takes 5 steps. First, turn off the water supply, then disconnect the hose from the machine and drain into a bucket. Next, disconnect the cables from the valve by releasing the tabs and gently pulling the plugs out, and release the rubber hoses using a pair of pliers to squeeze the clips. Some water will drain out of the hoses, so try and catch it with a towel. Then, just release the white tab and push the valve assembly towards it to remove it from the chassis. To see this process in more detail, there's a great video from eSpares in the description. It's really not difficult, but make sure you unplug your machine, turn off the water supply and have a bucket and a towel handy. Once you've taken the valve out, use a thin flathead screwdriver to release the two clips which hold the sensor on the valve and take it off. Then do the same on the new valve and clip the new sensor onto the old valve. All you have to do now is put the valve back in the machine, connect everything up again, turn the water and electric supplies back on and run a regular cycle. It should work perfectly, and you should notice the drum isn't overfilling anymore. Just to make sure, I went back into service mode and ran the flow rate sensor test again, though I'm not sure you need to do that. You shouldn't have any error codes this time, so just drain the machine and you're done.